Hello and welcome to all the men and women of the West. I'm Joe here with me, my co-host Dan.
Hello and greetings.
And we've got a very special video for you all. This one's going to be the start of a new set of videos on our part, a new playlist as well, because we're wanting to make a comeback, but the thing is, we kind of wrestled with what we were going to do when we come back. So we decided upon mythology because mythology has always been very important to us. And we came across, I came across someone on Twitter who was doing a lot of archaeology and linguistics and rune videos. And she has as her mission the stated goal of reviving the importance of traditional Nordic culture amongst the Norse. Now, the thing is, she is very much quite right about the importance of reviving knowledge of history and tradition amongst people. And I figured, why not kind of pitch in and do some YouTube videos on mythology. We are going to get back to Dragonlance. I actually have a few videos planned. We are going to be doing 5-minute reviews, or at least I am, down the road. It's just, as anyone knows, and everyone knows, I got burnt out because the YouTube algorithm is not much fun. But I'm coming back. We're having fun now. And be prepared to start seeing also more crossovers with full screen, as we're going to be doing a lot of movie reviews with him from now on, and I'm going to be posting them across all of our YouTube channels for whichever topic or whatever that it falls under. Like horror movie reviews will be on Nightmare Reviews, and so on. And we may do like the Lord of the Rings movie or Hobbit movie, and that would, or like the Ralph Bakshi movies, and that would fall under Brothers Arda. So, on with the show. Now, this show's going to be called Myth Hour, because why not? And we're going to start at the beginning of time with Norse mythology and also with Greek mythology and the other mythologies and work our way forward. And we're not going to advance very quickly. We're going to be doing this very slowly because I want to cover everything. And we are going to, when we get to a certain point, rely on the Prose Edda and the Poetic Eddas as kind of guides, like a book club podcast of sorts. But we're going to start a little differently with this book club. We're going to start with Audhumla, who, yes, I said Thumla, because the great cow that is there at the dawn of creation of Nordic mythology is one which has the eth letter. This is a Nordic letter which does not have a T sound or a D sound. Rather, it has a Scandinavian th sound, like TH. So, Audhumla is actually how you pronounce it properly. So, just wanted to get that out of the way because I am going to be wanting to get into the linguistics of it all. And it's very important we do. Now, Audhumla is attested primarily in the Prose Edda, and this is attested by Snorri Sturluson. However, we have no reason to doubt that this was part of the original mythology, as Snorri was the leading scholar of his day and had composed poetry and compiled a great many records on the Norse. And thankfully, the church also went to some effort towards preserving Snorri's writings and whatnot, because the church was very much interested in preserving a lot of these stories. The church was not a purveyor of ignorance and stupidity and whatnot, like a lot of people, or backwardness, like a lot of people like to suggest in, say, Hollywood, but rather the church was actually a purveyor of cultural and scientific progress and inventions. And the thing is, though, naturally they garnered a bad reputation with the Enlightenment when we switched from worshipping, well, God to worshipping banks and money. So this is one reason why, there's a lot of naysaying also about Snorri, because he really did do for the Norse what Cortez's Jesuits did for the Popol Vuh. That is to say, I guess you could call it Aztec Bible. And yes, we're going to at some point delve into the Popol Vuh. I'm putting it off for now because I once dipped my nose into it. There's some creepy, terrifying stuff in there. The Aztecs were not good people. As one of our friends tends to say, there's evil, then there's the Aztecs, who were perhaps the most demonic people to ever walk the earth. And yeah, I know YouTube's gonna crack the whip on this video, but I don't care. Now, Audhumla actually is a strange name. Author means riches, and Humala means hornless. So Audhumla means the rich hornless cow. However, author, can also mean fate or desolate desert. Now, the idea of Audhumla is that this is a sacred cow that was there in Ginnungagap, that is to say, the great yawning void. And Audhumla comes about many, many, many thousands or millions of years. It just says eons in most versions of the text. An untold amount of time passes. And the thing is, the realms of ice and fire are formed, and the thing with that realm is that the realm of fire and ice were to form after countless ages, and when they did, it took even longer for them to eventually I shouldn't say meet, but for fire to meet with ice. Now, it's during this period that Audhumla appears. Exactly how is not exactly clear in the stories. But Audhumla takes to licking the ice. And the thing is, as she's doing so, you have Ymir, who's, around. Now, Ymir was born before the ice was really touched by Audhumla. So I'm going back in the story. I know I'm a little out of order. But Ymir, or Orgelmir, as the giants or Jotun tend to call him, he was born from when the fire met the ice. And, he melted out from a large, I don't want to say icicle, but great ice mountain. And he was the largest giant ever born in Norse mythology. But he ended up needing food and sustenance. But how he sustained himself was by suckling at the teats of Audhumla. And this is how he drank milk and sustained himself. Audhumla, in the meantime, was looking at frost from Niflheimer, the realm of ice. The realm of fire, by the way, is called Muspelheimer. And as she was licking, eventually out popped the head of a man. And of course, in time, the next day there was the body, and then the legs. And in time, this figure and Ymir fought. Now, this figure, who was born after 3 days, is Buri, grandfather to Othin, Vili, and Ve. Now, I just want to roll back a little. Now, Ymir is a very interesting fellow, but we're going to manage him next time. Audhumla, for her part, lies at the center of the creation of the Nordic world. And it's interesting that the creation of the world begins, yes, with a realm of fire and ice, but more importantly, with a sacred cow. This celestial cow of sorts is a very interesting choice by the Norse. They believe the universe began in a way that's very different from Egyptian mythology, although the Egyptians had like a million myths about it. It's pretty different from how the Japanese kind of imagine things going. The Greeks imagine it very differently. Very differently. But the Norse have a much more stable myth of creation. But the question remains, where does the cow come from? I'm not sure. But what does the cow symbolize? Well, fertility, for one thing. Female fertility, obviously, because cows are female. And the fertility is obviously there because she also feeds Ymir. And it's also fairly evident in that she is a bit of a mother figure if we look at it as her giving birth to an extent to Buri. In a manner of speaking, while she did lick him from the frost, she is in a way taking on the role of mother. Now, I believe in the myth of Romulus and Remus, the she-wolf licks the two. And at one point, their cheeks, I mean. And the thing is, the animal licking the man or the boy, and this helping be a replacement for maternal affection, is an old image and an old idea. Like, it's there in the 1994 Jungle Book movie. The really good one by Stephen Sommers. You've got, like, it's in countless Wild Child movies. Even to an extent, the Tarzan Disney movie adopted the motif in the idea. The thing is, this is a very classic image. And looking at it as Audhumla in a way being mother to Buri, this makes her the great-grandmother to Othin, the Allfather of the Nordic universe, really. So, yeah, so she's obviously supposed to be a goddess of sorts, but not a goddess. It goes back to the idea of animals as sacred, which is very Bronze Age-ish. But
we could even say that she's a primordial being.
Yeah, she is. Absolutely. She takes on the role of Gaia, in a way. But so does Ymir. Now, Ymir, it's interesting because his limbs are hermaphroditic and very peculiar and seem like they're their own beings. Ymir's a very weird fellow. Very peculiar and very demonic and very evil. And we have to look at the Jotun in most cases as not having souls. But Audhumla seems to have it. But she seems to somehow endow it onto Buri. But Buri takes on the masculine role, but loses. Then his son loses. Then Buri's grandsons, Othin, Vili, and Ve, win. But win the great primordial war. But what's interesting is that Audhumla is never mentioned after Buri appears on the scene. And I'm just left wondering, I've always wondered since I was a child, what happens to her? Because surely Ymir still needs sustenance, doesn't he? The cow couldn't have moved on. I mean, it's in Ginnungagap, the Great Void. So where did the cow go? What happened?
That is an excellent question. Because in most myths, they explain what happens to the primordial beings.
Yeah.
Like Gaia becomes the earth.
Yeah, Gaia is the earth. Yeah. Thoth goes on to be, well, there are times when he's the primordial being and he goes on to be an advisor to Amun-Re. In other versions, it's Amun-Re who is the primordial being, and he goes on to be king or pharaoh of the Egyptian gods. Like the primordial beings that are Kami-sama And Kami-sama, who's the original primordial being, goes on to become the husband of Amaterasu. But Izanagi and Izanami, who are also primordial beings, create Japan, create Yomi, the underworld. And Izanami disappears from the scene because she's sealed up in hell, basically. And Izanagi races off, makes his daughter the Empress, and runs away, I guess. He disappears from the scene. But we know he's somewhere in the celestial paradise because he basically goes back home to watch over the birth of 1,500 new souls every year, I believe. And, or is it ever? Well, something like that. I'll have to read up on it again. Meanwhile, and Amaterasu marries Kami-sama. So, you have this divine couple. And from this union eventually comes Jimu. So, we know what happens in those myths. We also know what happens with Marduk and Tarhun's ancestors with regards to the Babylonian and the Hittite mythologies. But what in the heck happens to Audhumla? Now, thematically, it doesn't matter. And because the feminine is cast into Buri, then passed down to his son, to an extent, and then to his grandsons, Othin, Vili, and Ve. So, yeah, this is one of those things where it's kind of unanswered. And I remember when I was thinking up how to make the creation myth work for our world, I remember coming up with an answer for what to do with her. Of course, mine was totally random. And my idea was that when Audhumla was born, because I suspect she was also created in a way from the... Well, she was, I believe, created from the frost, just as Ymir was, to an extent. But my idea was to introduce a heavenly dog in there, or wolf, and it chases and kills Audhumla and eats her. That was my idea. And the celestial dog, of course, goes on to have a role. And yes, I'm composing an epic poem for the celestial wolf. And this plays a role in our own mythology that we've created, which combines all the mythologies of the world. Well, the primary four, as everyone knows, are Egyptian, Japanese, Norse, and Greek. And to a lesser extent, Celtic. Now, if you want to take a look at how that story is coming along, you can actually check out our Royal Road account, where, I'm writing Olympnomachi. Now, this takes place many, many, many millennia after Audhumla and whatnot, and takes place during the reign of King Zeus of Olympos, that is to say, Zeus, the Olympian, as well as Othin being All-Father over in Asgard. I think that's how you pronounce it correctly. So, yeah, if you want to support the channel, you can check out Royal Road and read. Yes, there's a Patreon and Ko-fi there, but it's basically a tip jar. You can check out the story and see if it's up to if it's your cup of tea. And we will also be including in the description our Saxon story, it's partially Viking-ish. Bear and Cub, which is kind of like Wolf and Cub, except in a fantasy world, and with Norsemen and Germans. It's pretty cool. So do check it out, and don't forget to smash that like and that subscribe button, because let's try to get to 1,500. But most of all, do follow us on Royal Road, as you'll be able to keep track of our progress with our various web novels there, especially if you like old-fashioned myths and stories and Tolkienian and Howardian and even Dragonlancian ideas and stories.